This is Climate to Action, a CSUSM student podcast. Climate to Action is an initiative of the Climate Action and Sustainability Center at California State University, San Marcos. My name is Molly Saruwatari. I am a third-year political science major with a sustainability minor. I am interested in climate action because I want to be able to speak up for the voiceless as I work toward my future career in environmental law.
And I'm Alex Sandoval. I'm a third-year student and I'm majoring in psychology. Being a part of a Climate to Action podcast has given me more knowledge about the climate crisis while also learning the ropes and being part of a podcast. We're here to amplify voices and explore solutions in the fight against climate change and to address climate injustice for all living things.
We are committed to incorporating discussions on Indigenous knowledge in addressing the climate crisis and to provide a call to action in every episode.
But first, we'd like to acknowledge that our recording studio is located on the traditional territory of the Luiseno Payamcoicham people.
CSUSM and its surrounding areas are still home to the 6 federally recognized bands of the La Jolla, Paula, Palma, Pachanga, Rincon, and Saboba Luiseno Payamcoicham people.
It's also important to acknowledge that this land remains the shared space among the Cupeño, Kumeyaay, and Ipai peoples.
Today's episode is focused on citizen science and climate action. We are delighted to introduce a special guest, Nicola Lewis, the Scotland and Northern Ireland manager for Buglife in the UK. Thank you for being here with us today.
Welcome, Rebecca.
Thanks for having me.
So, Rebecca, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? Kind of what got you into citizen science? What kind of made you want to go into Buglife? Anything like that?
I think I've got really strong memories of my dad in the garden building solar panels on our lawn. That's that curiosity. He was always, I grew up and I'd be in the shower and he'd come in, he had the switch on the outside and turn it off and say, we've got to save energy. So I kind of grew up like that, understanding the importance of how much we use and our impact on the natural environment. Having a garden full of multiple animals and learning how to look after and care for them and learning what their needs were. So, it was learning how to nurture and care from an early age.
Since this is a podcast about climate action, we'd love if you could tell us and our listeners how and when you first became aware of the climate crisis.
I think you have daily reminders of the climate crisis. I think there's no one point in time, as I mentioned, my dad and also my mum who used to cook and make things and saying, well, you have to be taking care of our resources. So that link to resources, the link to resilience within our system. And I think in my job on a daily basis, I had a recent event through one of our programs with a remote community. And we were out looking at sites to monitor the rivers. And we went to the site and I dipped my hand in the water and it was just uncomfortably warm, and it's these continual reminders of the impact it's having, that again, just kind of inspires you to do something as well as has that little bit of kind of fear around it. So I would say it's a regular thing, watching the bees come out in the garden and noticing that the flowers aren't ready yet. It's these kind of things. It's disrupting our system.
Yeah, absolutely. There's definitely daily reminders. I feel like I can't even walk to class without telling that there's a little pond at CSUSM and it dries up so fast, or this tree is not blooming at the same time it used to be 3 years ago. Anything like that. And you also mentioned the bees, how the pollen's not ready for them and they can't actually do their job, I guess, in our ecosystem. What are some other ways that climate change is affecting the invertebrate species and habits that Buglife works to protect?
Well, Buglife protects all invertebrates. So we've got multiple people within the organisation. We're looking at our species-rich grasslands and wildflower meadow areas that might be familiar with, but also our peatlands and our freshwater, but also our protected species as well. So we're looking at on different levels, which climate change impacts across them all. So you're looking at your peatland areas, as climate change increases, the flow of water is going to change. But you also get something called brownification coming in. So if water's sort of running through these areas, it's collecting these particulate matter, it's darkening the water. And as you climate change, of course, it's darker, it's absorbing more of the heat. So there's many different layers about it. I mean, it's it's changing the order in which things happen and shifting the temperature dependent processes on which invertebrates depend. So a lot of our work is about making our habitats resilient to it as well. So creating more space for invertebrates. With our river systems, we're looking at increasing the coverage and planting up our riparian areas. So areas that aren't impacted by other things, for example, just need that shade for our rivers. But climate change is also exacerbating impacts we currently have as well. So we're kind of fighting against all these multiple layers, but it's just building up the system. But importantly, also making people aware. A lot of the work we do within our organisation across all of our programmes is about bringing people into the picture, about educating, about talking about what we do. A classic example, I guess, is with our freshwater. One of our projects, Guardians of Our Rivers, working with the Riverfly Partnership, bringing people to the water. And a lot of the invertebrates are ones that they've never seen and actually don't even know exist. So it's about bringing invertebrates um, alive for everybody. And so they're no longer hidden. If something's hidden, then you can't hear about it. Why should you? You don't even know it's there. So a lot of it's conversational pieces, getting people involved.
Yeah, absolutely. Is there a particular species or ecosystem that you believe to be especially vulnerable to climate related changes, or is like it pretty much just the whole ecosystem as a whole?
Well, I think we have to keep the conversation as an ecosystem at whole. I mean, you can go in to look at particular environments. The freshwater environment, for example, is particularly vulnerable. Our climate change is having a profound effect on river ecosystems. Freshwater vertebrates being particularly vulnerable to these changes. They're trapped within the system. And these are small but crucial organisms, and they play a vital role on the aquatic food webs and ecosystem functioning as a whole. So, with invertebrates, because they are that trophic layer, they're supporting everything else above. So, when you're looking at protecting them across the system and looking at protecting across the impacts of things like climate change, it's the advantage to everything else above. So I think if you want a particular story, we've got this little chap, the upland summer mayfly. Um, so people think about the winter time, they think about snow, especially in Scotland. We get lots of snow. But this is no longer the case. We're getting less and less snow, and that snow line is moving north. So this little mayfly was using the snow to insulate, well, the snow insulates its habitat, covers over these streams, and it's helping it to survive. But now the snow is no longer there, it's having to shift its range. So you can talk about climate change in general, which I think we always should, how it affects our day-to-day lives. But also if you want to look at these individual stories to help people follow them and what's happening to demonstrate, yeah, there's lots of examples of that as well.
Yeah, that gives like a really specific example that somebody could, understand better. In what ways do invertebrates contribute to ecosystem resilience against climate change?
Wow, there's lots of ways. I think in sort of a larger umbrella, their storage. They help the carbon sequestration and storage, their activity increasing soil carbon storage within the marine system. They're the carbon cyclers as well, little super powered carbon capture superheroes, I guess. With ecosystem adaptation, they provide seed dispersal, help with the kind of regulation, improving infiltration and retention within environment. If you think about the worms in our garden, for example, it's good to have examples that people can think about. So they're burrowing into the soil, they're creating these wee tunnels, so when it rains the water isn't just flowing off, it's actually infiltrating into the soil. It's the same mimicked in our freshwater environment, where we've got mayfly that do the same kind of burrowing technique into the bed of the rivers. So they help retain the water on the land rather than it running straight off. But also there's the feedback mechanisms, disturbance recovery. They can help to accelerate ecosystem recovery following things like wildfires and storms, for example. But they're also can be a pioneer species, so often facilitate that succession after extreme events. So they perform lots of really important functions in helping build a resilience.
You kind of touched based on how ecosystems and how like invertebrates in general can kind of adapt to the conservation, but how does bug life in itself adapt to the conservation strategies in response to the effects of climate change?
Yeah, I think as an organization, we contribute across many layers and equally, they're all equally important in our eyes, I guess, from contributing to policy and legislation changes, right down to community level where we're talking to people on the ground. I think it's highlighting the importance of things. You know, we've got campaigns like our light pollution campaign, which people generally don't think about, working with the planning systems, both local and governmental. So when they're designing these systems, how can we make sure that there's space for nature and nature is protected within that? But I think we value we do value these conversations on all levels. It's not just talking to those looking at policy and legislation, it's talking to everyday people who can make changes within their lives and help to connect the dots to understand.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think it's important to talk about that, how it's not just legislation and, the power holders, because people, at least in my opinion, I feel like personally, I wouldn't know the first thing to do. So it's good to have something like an organization like this to have that to get information on. Can you tell us more about citizen science?
Yeah, it's a particular area close to my heart, I guess. I think years ago when I was studying at university, the thought of citizen science was just a side thought, I guess. The data's not really important. It's not going to tell us enough. It's not real science. And over the years, I worked with lots of species recovery programs. And, when you're trying to recover vast areas over short spaces of time, you need people. And that's where citizen science comes in. And that's where it provides the magic, I guess. You're joining it together. But citizen science can provide data. A lot of the techniques that we use now are driven by science, have been tried and tested. We have one particular project with Guardians of a River. It's been going for over 10 years through the Riverfly Partnership. We know and have faith in the data. We're working with our environment agencies as well that are using the data. But I think the big question we've got to ask ourselves is, where does responsibility lie? So with climate change, we are all responsible, okay? We all contribute, we all take from the environment, and we all give to the environment as well. So everybody has that role to play. So with our Gardens of our Rivers project, for example, we're going out to communities across Scotland and we're delivering training on how to monitor their local watercourses. So understanding what is on their doorstep, how it's impacted, what is currently being done, and what you can do about it, how you can be involved. It's also making it simple, not taking too much of their time, making it sustainable within itself. People think about, you have to make everything you do sustainable, including citizen science. Um, but yeah, I think the biggest thing about that particular project is what comes back. We have our training program, we have our scientific knowledge, but also going into communities, there's so much learning and understanding to gain that can help us in the fight against climate change to bring both these knowledge bases together.
Yeah, absolutely. I know so many people who go to the school who actually don't even know what citizen science is or have never even heard of it. I'm fortunate enough to be that sustainability minor, and I took Professor Dabb's course, and we talked a lot about citizen science and what it was. So I was able to kind of understand what citizen science is for. And like you said, it's truly like a magic because it brings communities together to help like combat climate change. You kind of talked about the Guardians of the River project. However, is there a project of citizen science that's your favorite, or a project of your own organization that's your favorite to work on or that you've produced?
Yeah, I think the Guardians of a River was a project that I worked on within Buglife, but there is other citizen science project that I've been lucky to be involved in. Um, and if you go on to our website, there's a project looking at, it's called Beelines. And what it has is it's mapped out the whole of the UK with this kind of insect superhighway. So
Oh
it's
my
a way
gosh.
of, I know personally at home, they've got a patch in my garden that I've let go wild. Um, I can actually go in and register that on the superhighway. And what it is trying to build the connectivity across the country, but it collects all projects, including the ones that we're delivering as an organisation. But yeah, all of our citizen science across the country. There's also another one where you can download an app on your phone. I don't know if you remember as kids going out driving and having to clean off the windscreen because of all these little tiny little corpses all over.
Yeah.
Yes.
But what we notice is that's not happening so much anymore. So what Buglife has, if they've come up with this citizen science project where you can clean off your registration plate, you can take a photograph, download the app, and then before you go on your journey, and when you come back from your journey, you take another photograph and it counts the little carcasses.
Oh my
So
gosh.
How
the splats.
interesting.
So there's lots of kind of fun ways of getting involved, but what they're showing is really big declines in invertebrates. So it also helps that general understanding. Yeah.
Oh, I've never thought about that. I was just wiping my windshield yesterday and I
Yeah.
was thinking the same thing. Like, I don't see it as much. Or usually when you travel, I feel like is when you
Hmm.
notice it the most.
Right. I feel like I used to have to scrape it off like once a week, and now it's like, oh, I can go like 2 months without scraping it off. It just gets dirty, but
I didn't realize that's like a negative thing.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think the last result, I mean, I don't want to misquote here, but I think the slide I was talking about in the lecture earlier was about, they noted about 62% declines. But
oh my
if you
gosh.
look into some of our individual species as well, there was a particular spider I was looking at, it's saying 79% decline of this. I mean, the
Oh my
numbers are
gosh.
extraordinarily high. The State of Nature report, I think the one more recent one is talking about an overall 33% decline. So we're talking about
Holy
really big
cow.
numbers.
Yeah.
And if you were thinking about that trophic layer, again, going back to that and what our invertebrates are supporting, it has impacts, kind of a bit of a cascade. So, yeah,
Wow.
get involved.
Yes. How can citizen science make climate change more visible and climate action more accessible to everyone?
Yeah, I guess it is what it says on the tin. The design is for citizens. That I mean, it's enabling people to have the conversations, and there's lots of opportunities to be able to do that. Um, with our projects, there's some examples there, and there's other organisations, of course. If you don't happen to enjoy invertebrates, that I'll never fully understand, of course,
Yeah.
because they're so awesome. But yeah, it just enables you in your day to day life to be thinking. Um, about climate change and the variety of ways that you can contribute and the variety of programs that allow you to connect to actually collect data and to make some change. But yeah, just keep talking and having these conversations.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned earlier that you just said like get involved. That's the most important. Is there a way that our listeners can specifically get involved in citizen science?
Absolutely. There's loads and loads of options, but I think what I would start with is go out for a walk locally. Go and explore your local area and think about things that you enjoy, where your heart is, what you enjoy doing, and the areas of nature where you would want to contribute to. Because the thing about any science or any data collection is you want that long term connection for the long term data. Okay, so that's the first thing. Um, and I think there's lots of organizations, watch ourselves, you would then kind of look up or you can contact them to say, I'm really interested in my part of the world. I'm interested in, say, my lake or the river running into my land. I'm interested in looking at this green park that's mowed on a regular basis that could quite easily be a wildflower meadow. What can I do? There's loads and loads of online resources. And I think the other thing as well is to get more people involved, so you can build up your own community group, or often you can join groups that are already established. But yeah, start with what matters to you first, and explore locally, and then take it from there.
I think that's important too, especially in San Diego County. We have so many places that, we could take a deeper look into. In every episode of our podcast, we have a call to action. We like to ask our guests their thoughts about what our listeners can do to positively impact our community. What are some simple things people can do to help address the climate crisis?
I think that depends on your time. As a mother of three, working full time, doing a PhD, I know that time is of the essence.
Wow. Yeah.
So you want to start and look at your household. You want to start and look at your garden. Think of simple actions. No more, let it grow. No more may. There's all these sort of slogans out there. That's really easy. So just choose a patch. Let it go wild. See the flowers coming through. You can then go and do something that's called a timed insect count or a fit count, where you get a meter square. I use duct tape because duct tape's good for everything, right? So
Right. Yeah.
you can make a square and put it on your lawn. Put it on before, and count. Sit there for 10 minutes. All the instructions are online. Count for 10 minutes, and you're looking at the number of invertebrates that visit that area. You then let it grow, and then do the same thing, and you can see the difference, and you can enter the data. Think about wet wipes. So you flushing down the toilet. Think about the flea treatment you might lose in your dog, the dishwashing liquid powder you're using. There's loads of little things on a day-to-day, and then you can step to the bigger things that are happening, collecting data from the environment around you, like projects like Guardians of Our Rivers. But yeah, try not to overwhelm yourself, because we need to conserve our conservation. There's a conservationist in all of us. You cannot do everything yourself, and you can't do everything at once, but make these small things happen on a daily basis.
Yeah, that's truly amazing. I know as college students, time is really of the essence, especially right now. We're recording this, it's about to be finals week, and I know I'm stressed out. I can't even imagine how like our senior class is feeling with figuring out what the next steps in their life are. And so you're so right about not letting it overwhelm, because even I have to remind myself too, I can't, like, yes, I can start the change, but I, as one person, am not going to 360 climate change, or 180, I guess, not 360. um, I, as one human being, can't completely 180 climate change. However, I can be the voice that stands up and kind of start that, or I can be the person in my household with my roommates who's like, hey, let's not leave the light on overnight, or why is the AC at 50 degrees?
Turn the water off when you brush your teeth.
Exactly. Like, we don't need to be taking an hour-long shower or anything like that. There's such easy ways that you can kind of add to combating climate change, and I think that's something that's really overlooked.
I also think it's something you can do together. Like, obviously, now that we talked with you, we could take it back to our peers, our friends,
Yeah.
and even like that thing with the duct tape. I think that would be something fun to
Mhm.
do with your friends, your family. I mean, anybody really. But thank you all for tuning in to this episode of Climate to Action. Remember, whether it's through learning more, making sustainable choices, or advocating for change, every step counts. Keep taking action, and we'll see you next time.
Want to hear more from Climate to Action, a CSUSM student podcast? Listen wherever you get your podcasts and follow us on our socials at Climate to Action.
For Instagram and YouTube, that's at Climate to Action. For TikTok, it's at Climate to Action. Visit for updates, behind the scenes content, and more.
Finally, Climate to Action wants to remind you to take climate action. We challenge you to take the first steps in your own climate journey. Like Rebecca suggested, let's make sure that we take time for ourselves and really can take into consideration each individual impact that we have. Let's transform our climate curiosity into climate action together. Remember, every small change can create a big impact when working collectively. Climate to Action is produced at Inspiration Studios on the CSUSM campus and is funded through a generous donation from the Rosemary Kramer Rate Foundation.
Until next time, this is Alex
And Molly.
from Climate to Action signing off.